there was an American Airlines twin engine, one of their regional prop airplanes was descending into Alliance, and I was just kind of flying around in the practice area, and there a kind of shadow came over the cockpit, and I heard this loud noise, and the airplane jiggled, and I looked over out the side window. In my mind's eye, this thing was, a couple hundred feet away from me. This jet that was descending into Alliance. In real life, it was probably way farther than that, but it was way closer than I would have really liked to been. I mean, it scared me. Actually, that was a moment of truth for me because I turned back towards the airfield. I was like, I got to get out of here. I got to get on the ground.
Welcome to the Aviation Mentors Podcast, the podcast that takes your dreams of flight and turns it into reality.
Sponsored by Strass Financial, financing your flight training.
For pilots, by pilots. I'm Brandon Martini, a commercial pilot and flight instructor.
And I'm Carson Vasquez, I'm a private pilot.
Whether you're a seasoned pilot or a beginner with dreams of flight,
Aviation Mentors is your source for expert insights, industry trends, and inspiring stories.
So fasten your seatbelts and prepare for this incredible journey through the skies.
And stay connected with us on social media for exclusive content.
And visit our website at www.aviationmentors.com and let us be your co-pilot on this adventure.
Welcome back, everybody, to another awesome and, of course, amazing episode of the Aviation Mentors Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, you'll notice I am solo. There's no Carson here today. He is not feeling well, so I am taking it over, and that means I get to say his outro, which I'm really excited about because he really loves saying that outro, and when I get to take it, feels liberating. But today we actually have a guest, so it's not just me talking to you today, although I know you always love that, of course. I'm just kidding. But we have a fantastic guest today. His name is Shaun Dawson. Shaun is a San Diego-based software engineer and GA pilot, that means general aviation if you're new, who caught the flying bug at 17 years old in Texas. I know my son's starting to catch that bug right now. He's telling me he wants to become a pilot almost at 15. He funded his lessons by delivering pizza and practicing touch and goes in Microsoft Flight Sim between sessions. After the classic story of running out of money and time, that kind of happens to all of us. And he made his way back through gliders, earned a tailwheel endorsement, flew a 1947 Champ, solo from Texas to San Diego, eventually added instrument, commercial, and a type rating, which we'll talk about later on, to his logbook. He's also the owner of NFlight, maker of the popular Nomad mic adapter and the newly launched Ascent headset, and hosts the Raising Men podcast on parenting and masculinity. So welcome to the podcast, Shaun. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Brandon, thank you so much. I love that intro. And I was told I was going to be talking to Carson. And I showed up. I was all excited about talking to Carson, and this was a bait and switch.
Bait and switch. That's the way we do it here. I know. Sometimes you get both of us. Sometimes you get one of us. But today is the day you get me. And I'm looking outside today, and I'm pretty excited. Even though it's very cloudy in Southern California, they're getting ready for the Newport Beach Boat Show.
Nice.
Outside. And I can't wait till all the giant boats get out there. I think it's like next weekend. So I am ready for that.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's a great boat show up there. I've been there.
Yeah. Come on down. We can come hang out in person if you want to come check it out.
I would love it.
Well, let's just kind of hop on in. I want to know what got you started with flying? What got the flying bug in your head? And what do you love about it?
When I was 13 years old, my dad had a good friend who was the owner of a helicopter service. And I ended up getting to go on a helicopter ride. And that is actually what infected me. I ended up spending kind of my whole summers for a couple of years with this guy and just hanging around the helicopter service, flying around in helicopters. He taught me how to do some stuff. And I remember looking down, we were landing at Riverside Airport. And I remember looking down and watching a biplane land at Riverside Airport underneath the helicopter we were flying, and it looked like it was fake. I could get how a helicopter could fly because it like blows the air down, right? And but an airplane, how does that work? And I just remember being in awe of that. And that got me into the studying, and it got me thinking about it, and it got it working in the back of my head. And when I was 17 years old, I was in high school. My best friend at the time and I were just goofing off after school one day, and we thought, let's go get pilot's licenses. And that's what started it. As you said, I delivered pizzas during the week in South Lake, Texas, to at a brand new Pizza Hut, and that would earn me enough money to be able to afford my flying lesson on Saturdays. And it took me about 6 or 7 months before I actually was able to get my license, but just because I didn't have much money.
6 or 7 months is pretty quick in the scheme of things. For a lot of people are doing this as a hobby. So I mean, you busted your butt to make that happen, and sometimes that's what's needed in life. You got to go bust yourself and work hard. Then you get success, and that success is in form of a pilot certificate. It sounds like.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it helped that I was flying out of kind of an uncontrolled field, kind of out in the middle of nowhere in Texas. Almost, it was a Hicks field. Tango 36 is the or was the identifier. I
Is it
think
no
it's
longer
changed
around?
now. It's now an air park.
Oh,
Uh,
nice. Okay.
yeah, yeah, but yeah, and it was at the time it was the cheapest place in the entire world to learn how to fly. My Cessna 152 rate was $50 an hour wet, and my instructor was 15.
Wow. Yeah. I've talked about this a couple times in the past. When we look at how much things cost back then and compared to today, and I haven't done the analysis I think since like 2019, but when I did it in 2019, I ran the analysis because I used to hear the old timers say, when I was learning to fly, it cost me $1.50 an hour. And I can't
Yeah,
believe you're spending $150 an hour, or 120 back then when I did the analysis. And I actually looked at the price of the dollar and I ran what it would look like, and it's actually cheaper. Well, it was in 2019. I think it actually went higher now, but in 2019, it was actually cheaper to get your pilot certificate than it was back in like the 50s and 60s when it was a dollar
no
fifty.
kidding. That doesn't
Yeah,
surprise me.
so it felt like it would be cheaper, especially when you go talk about it, stuff like that. But definitely was not, which is really interesting. I know that we mentioned on the intro that you used a lot of Microsoft Flight Simulator, and the reason why I want to talk to you about that is when I used to own my flight schools, I had this one guy who came in. He said he's never flown in an airplane before, and he was like 17 years old. And he came in and knew every single thing about my steam gauge 1980 Cessna 172 November model. He literally knew everything. He knew exactly where everything was at. He knew flap settings. He knew air speeds. He knew V speeds from from red line all the way down to rotation. Right? He knew them all. And I was like, "You've never flown a plane before?" I thought he was one of those guys who, like, they come over and they're already an airline pilot or something, and they just fake it. And this kid, he couldn't land, but he could get really, really, really close. Like, he took off by himself. He did everything on his own because I made him brief me on it before, and I was like, "You know what? This demo flight, who knows? This could be like a prodigy." And I, like, begged him for me to give him a scholarship for, like, $5,000.
Wow.
And he said no, because he wanted to go to some big university. I think his parents wanted him to go to university, but I was like, "You can't. You're gonna be like the best pilot I've ever met." And it was because he used Microsoft Flight Sim since he was like 10 years old every single day. Like, that was his passion. And so I saw that. Now, he had a whole just in the one 45-minute flight that we did together, or maybe an hour. I went a little long for this kid because he deserved it. And I could not believe how good he was. He did have bad habits that were going to have to be broken. For sure, he had bad habits. Uh, and that was the only downside I saw to all of that. But since you use Microsoft Flight Sim to practice, what do you think that did for you as a aspiring pilot, or even after you became a pilot?
Yeah, Brandon, it was everything, frankly. Even at $65 an hour, my flight lessons were pretty expensive for me as, a 17-year-old high school student whose only source of income was delivering pizzas.
Mhm.
And so Microsoft Flight Sim gave me just a ton of just rote experience, just being able, and literally all I did until I soloed was touch and goes at Meigs Field in Chicago, which doesn't exist anymore, and I'm sure it's not the default field for Microsoft Flight Simulator anymore. And back then, the Flight Simulator was it was very good. It worked fine. It properly dealt with the mechanics, but it was, it's not like today where, they have virtual airlines today where you're in charge of the 747, and if it's in New York and it needs to be in Miami, you got to fly it there, and stuff like that. Back then it was, you're kind of on your own. But I'll tell you, I soloed in something like 4.5 hours,
Oh my gosh.
just simply because that was a month, right? Because I'm doing one lesson a week, and in that intervening time, I had 6 days of touch and goes with Microsoft Flight Simulator, and I felt really, really, really comfortable. Um, but it gave me bad habits as well, and I didn't have checklist discipline. I did, in fact, on my very first solo flight outside of the airport environment, I forgot to turn my transponder to out,
Yeah.
and I almost got into midair as a result.
Wow.
So the airport I used to fly is called Hicks Airfield. Is really close to Alliance Airfield in Fort Worth, and there was an American Airlines twin engine, one of their regional prop airplanes was descending into Alliance, and I was just kind of flying around in the practice area, and there a kind of shadow came over the cockpit, and I heard this loud noise, and the airplane jiggled, and I looked over out the side window, and in my mind's eye, this thing was, a couple 100 feet away from me. This jet that was descending into Alliance. In real life, it was probably way farther than that, but it was way closer than I would have really liked to been. It scared me, and that was a moment of truth for me, because I turned back towards the airfield. I was like, I got to get out of here. I got to get on the ground. And I was kind of panicking, and I realized I was like, okay, first of all, this is not a safe mental state to be able to land the airplane in. So I need to relax. I need to calm down. I did turn my transponder on, and I need to get to a mental place where I'm not this amped up anymore. And so I flew around for another 10 or 15 minutes, and I was calm and I was relaxed, and I kind of got my wits about me. Then I headed back to the airport, and I landed without incident. But if I had gone home, if I had landed in that state, number one, I'm not sure that I could have landed safely. Number two, I don't think I ever would have gotten back in an airplane again.
That is a phenomenal story because it teaches you that it's only you up there when you're doing your first solo, and you have to overcome all those problems. And most of it is a mental capacity to be able to do so. Um, I went scuba diving last weekend, and there was one person who came with us, and we were doing a deep dive, and they just started freaking out. And they were like, I need to go to the surface. I need to go to the surface. I'm like, no, you don't. If you go to the surface, you're going to be going to a chamber. Calm down, relax, and you will be fine. And of course, he was fine. And he did calm down, and he was okay. But the same thing happens in flying, and that's primary truth of it right there. On a side note, I looked up Hicks Airfield. I want to see what the identifier was. I looked up Tango 36 first because I figured, oh, maybe that was it. It is Tango 67.
Tango 67. Yes. Okay. I'm mixing it up with another airport.
So now we know it is Tango 67 Hicks Airfield in Fort Worth, right?
Fort Worth, Texas. That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's it. And you're right. It did turn into a
an air park. Yeah,
air park.
It's a cool little air park. There used to be this great restaurant there. It's a neat place. It's a great place to visit.
Well, I'm seeing the runway right now. It looks like it's runway 32 is the main runway.
Yep.
It's cool to kind of go back and think about some of those things. Luckily, I still fly at Riverside Airport, and that's where I did my first solo at, which is KRAL, Romeo Alpha Lima. So it's a fantastic thing.
I love it.
Outside of that, I know you ran out of money. You went to school. You did all those things. I guess your girlfriend ended up getting you glider lessons that relit the fire.
That's right.
Tell me about that. I know I've towed a lot of gliders, and I've only taken a few glider lessons. I think I've got 5 hours in gliders. I never soloed gliders, never did anything like that. I just never put the time into it, but I really loved towing them. I just didn't love flying them as much. I guess I like the engine perspective. But tell me a little about that.
I love towing gliders as well. I still occasionally do that. It's been harder to do since I've had kids. But I will still go out and tow gliders every once in a while. But getting back into gliding, my girlfriend at the time, she's now my wife, bought me lessons, glider lessons. And this I hadn't been flying for 15 years.
Oh, wow.
And it absolutely gave me the bug. And now, for a long time I didn't have any money, and then I didn't have any time. And then at this point I had barely enough of both of those things. And I went down to Midway Regional Airport it's in near Waxahachie, Texas. JWY is the identifier there. And there's this amazing school called Big Q Aviation. It is just an absolute delightful place. You go there, you want to just hang out there because they bring the spirit of aviation, and there's usually just a bunch of pilots hanging around. And it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Just the energy around this place was invigorating. And I went down there. I had my first glider lesson in a Grobe 103, and
I've flown one of those before.
yeah, it was the aerobatic version, and just absolute fantastic platform, a great learning platform as well. And it just absolutely caught the bug. I recommend everybody should get their glider rating. It gives you a sense of, I remember thinking, um, I was almost scared of landing, and what happens if I have to go around, and a trepidation about going around and all of these things. Well, on a glider, you don't have the option of going around.
Yeah.
But you're also going a lot slower, and you have a lot of control of how far your glide is with your spoilers and all this stuff. It just gives you this confidence in being able to control your airplane and land your airplane. And if you need to, I remember after I got my glider rating, I sat down and I got checked out in a CTLS, which is a light sport airplane, kind of a funky little platform, but pretty modern. It's got a nice flat panel display and all that stuff. Cool airplane. I was getting checked out in it so that I could fly my girlfriend down to Austin for a weekend. And we were really, really, really high on final. And the instructor goes, "Oh, no way you can get down from here." And I looked around and I go, "I can get down from here." And just put in this nice slip in there and landed perfectly on the numbers. And he was like, "Wow, I can't believe it." And he was a power guy. I'm a glider guy. If you have to get down in a glider and you're over the runway, well, you don't really have a choice. You've got to figure out how to get there. And it just gives you a real confidence. I feel the same way about aerobatic flying. I think that there is a place where the risk reward gets a little bit too on the risky side, but at the primary level or even the sportsman level, I think everybody should kind of experience that, because you don't realize how much of flying you're kind of scared of because you haven't experienced it. And so you need to go out and train your lizard brain and get out there and experience it. And gliding was like that for me.
That is so rad.
You know what time it is, Carson?
Time's up, Brandon.
It's time to talk about one of our favorite companies.
Which company would that be?
Aviation Mentors is excited to be sponsored by the one and only Stratus Financial, dedicated to supporting the next generation of future aviators.
Stratus Financial really understands the financial challenges that students face in pursuing their aviation dreams. That's why they offer student loans specifically tailored to aspiring pilots.
With competitive rates and flexible repayment plans, Stratus Financial helps take your aviation education to new heights.
So go visit their website today at www.stratus.finance. Just to be clear, that is not .com, it's .finance. And embark on your journey towards a sky full of possibilities.
Carson, it's time to get back to what we do best.
The show.
I want to transition to something else, actually, because I have kind of a something that I have as well. You had a Acroduster, is that correct?
A Starduster 2.
Starduster 2. So when we talked earlier, I thought you said Acroduster, and I had an Acroduster 1, not a Starduster 1.
Okay.
And it was this little orange baby biplane, single seat biplane. I never ended up flying it. because it needed quite a bit of stuff to get airworthy on it. But I did taxi it around, and it was fun to taxi around. And I ended up selling it to my dad's best friend who owns restaurants, and now it sits at a restaurant called Heroes Bar and Grill in Eastvale, California. And there's a bunch of
Wow.
different Heroes all over Southern California. He's a restaurateur that's got 5 or 6 locations now, and it sits above the bar. And it's pretty cool just kind of sitting there. And he has the I pulled the engine out of it. I ended up selling the engine myself. It was an 0360. It was like grossly overpowered. If I would have flown this thing, I thought I might kill myself. It was like crazy overpowered. And that's probably the reason why I didn't get it fully put together. I didn't have the experience in a single seat biplane.
Yeah, that's scary. That would be scary. I agree for me even.
Yeah, I mean, single seat biplane, super short wheelbase, like
Mhm.
no margin for error whatsoever. And I just don't have enough tail wheel time to feel confident in that.
Yeah, I have a ton of tail wheel time, and I don't think I would feel comfortable with that. And I've got biplane time. I've got a lot of time in the Great Lakes. I've got a lot of time in the Starduster. The Starduster, the Acroduster, um, really small. I'm 6'5", 230 pounds. I am not going to fit in an Aquaduster. I've tried. My legs are actually too long. I hit the dash, and I actually don't physically fit in that thing.
That's hilarious.
It's more than just uncomfortable. But that Starduster too, it's built for a big guy. And that was a really really great airplane, and unfortunately got taxied into a 172 and totaled.
Oh, well, I know you also had something that happened in that as an emergency. And part of being a pilot is dealing with emergencies, as we've talked about, and shaking off whatever happened that goes bad with you, right? So tell us about the emergency you had in that Starduster and kind of something you learned from that.
The main emergency that happened in that aircraft was one of my partners in the aircraft. He was flying it around, and we had just installed a inverted oil system so that we could do aerobatics in that. And to test it, he flipped it upside down and flew around for a minute and flipped it back right side up. And when he did that, he noticed that the digital gauge that read our oil pressure dropped to zero. But the digital gauge in that airplane was squirrely. It was weird, and it would drop to zero at random times. And so he didn't trust the gauge. Turns out that one of the failure modes of this inverted oil system can be that the little shuttlecock that controls the oil flow can get stuck in one position or another, and you can lose oil pressure if you flip inverted. It gets stuck in the inverted position. You flip back right side up, and it's the shuttlecock is still stuck there, and it shuts off your oil. He flew around in that thing for 45 minutes with no oil pressure.
Do you think he could have flown it upside down and it would have had oil pressure?
That's exactly how he would have needed to fix it. It would have had to fly upside down. It would have gotten oil pressure, and then fly right side up again, and maybe that would have cleared the problem, or he would have had to shut the engine off and turn it back on, which also would have been a thing to do. In this case, he didn't believe the indicator, which you should never have an indicator that you can't believe in your aircraft. Never, ever, ever allow yourself to be in this position.
Agreed.
We didn't have that discipline back then. We do now. And so he ended up, his engine seized up partially over Lake Wolford, which is, what's the identifier for that? 8CL1, Charlie Lima 1. And this airport is insane. It's pretty short. It's very narrow. It sits at the top of a mountain. There are some updrafts that happen that are right. It's kind of like landing in Catalina.
Yeah.
It's that same sort of thing. I've flown in there half a dozen times and have literally never successfully landed on my first approach. I've had to go around every single time I've ever landed at this airport.
That's crazy.
And this guy lost his engine right near that airport, heads for the airport, sticks the landing, rolls out, and the airplane is, other than the fact that the engine is toast, perfectly, the engine is not, nobody gets hurt. The airplane is not damaged, and it it was a miracle. That
I'd fly with that guy any day.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, he was one of my instrument instructors eventually as well. He's a great pilot, and so yeah, that was a tremendously scary experience. We ended up replacing the engine, and then I had an emergency in that thing um, that really scared me. We had an electronic ignition, and I was taking off. In this case, I was taking off out of Montgomery Airfield, Mike Yankee Foxtrot, and it just wasn't generating very much power. I was able to get maybe 150 feet a minute, and this thing normally was able to climb at 1,000 feet a minute off the ground, and it just didn't feel right. And so I'm really, really low, and there is no place to land. If you lose your engine on takeoff at Montgomery Airfield, it's a real problem.
Yeah, I've flown out of there a lot of times.
Yeah. And so I turned downwind, a real low downwind. I asked the tower to let me land. I told him I wanted to stay in the pattern, and I landed. I should have declared an emergency, which is another lesson I've learned. Always declare an emergency.
Mhm.
And I ended up landing. I ended up flying a very abbreviated, um, very short pattern. I maybe got up to 500 feet, and I landed that airplane, and I would never have flown it again. It ended up getting destroyed a little while later, um, but I never would have flown it again. It really, really, really scared me. And the reason it happened is that the electronic ignition started misfiring.
Wow.
And so the fix would have been to switch it over to mags only, and that would have been fine. I didn't know that at the time, and it didn't even occur to me to try. I don't know if I would have had the guts to try because I was climbing, and so switching. What if I switched over to the electronic ignition and that killed the engine, and now I'm 400 feet above the ground with a dead engine in a place with no outlanding opportunities. I probably would have, and because I was okay, I probably would have gone ahead and flown, kept climbing up to at least 1,000 feet, however long that took me, and then tried fiddling with it or landed just like I did. But man, that was a harrowing experience.
I think that's a really big thing for students to learn, and even tenured pilots like yourself or me. I think that if you don't know your POH, and in this case, your supplemental POH, you can get yourself in hairy situations. And I've been in several. I've talked about them on the podcast before, and it sounds like you've had your fair share as well. And it's just part of what happens as you are a pilot long term. If you go to the airlines, you're going to have an emergency at some point too. Hopefully, it's not a big one like a Sully event. Hopefully, it's just something small, something breaks, and you've got to get it fixed. Uh, but these are the things that happen as your pilots, and you have to be prepared for it. There's a reason why it takes so much time and effort to get type ratings. You have to know that exact plane. And with that caveat, I would like to ask you a little bit about kind of you went from getting your instrument commercial and then you got a type rating. I'd love to know, did you do that on purpose? Did you just say, hey, I just want to go get everything because I want to go fly this big plane? Or did you just kind of accidentally stumble upon it and see where it all happened? And then on top of that, what was the type rating?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It was a mixture of both of those things. Um, it's always been a bucket list item for me to fly jets, and I met a guy who ran a Part 135 operation, and got to talking about him, and we ended up driving out to Borrego together. And, so we had that whole drive where we were just chatting about stuff. And what we ended up chatting with on the drive out there and on the whole drive back was what it's like getting a jet rating. The fact that he was managing a Phenom 300 that he could use extra pilots for. The market was booming. And so, he says, yeah, if you wanted to get your 300 rating, I could put you to work and it would pay for itself and I would at least break even. And so I was like, man, I got to do this. and it took me about 9 months to get a training slot, and that should have been an indication to me that this was not necessarily the smartest plan in the world, because I eventually did get a training slot, went to Dallas, got my rating. It took me about a month. By the way, one of the hardest things I've ever done. I was, this was my first jet rating. Everybody else in my class, this was a supplemental rating for them. They had other jet ratings, and so it was kind of like taking physics, and everybody else in the class knows calculus, but you don't, and so you have to learn both things. Um, and then uh, I got my PIC rating in the Phenom 300. That's also, if I had it to do over again, I would have gotten an SIC rating. That's way easier,
Way easier.
and it doesn't. You can't act as PIC in pretty much your first year anyway, the way that the requirements work out, and so there's not an additional benefit in doing the extra hard thing. And then when you go back to get your rating again, you can get the harder rating, and it's easier. But I really struggled with it, but it was really a phenomenally valuable experience. I loved it. Um, and the bottom kind of fell out of the market by the time I graduated from my training course, and I ended up not actually getting to work for that Part 135 operation for very long. But I do have the rating, and the bucket list item is checked off, and I'm really glad I did it. But it's a tremendously difficult experience.
Yeah, I mean, I did an SIC type rating where I didn't have to go to school. I just got to get trained by the PIC in a Grumman Albatross, which I've talked about a lot. And it is one hell of a cool airplane.
Yeah, those are so neat. I would love to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's worthwhile. I want to do a PBY Catalina next. I really like seaplanes, obviously. Uh, and I think that's probably what I'll do is PBY Catalina next. I'll just do the SIC. I don't need PIC either. I mean, where am I ever going to go fly one unless I go buy one day, which anything is possible. Well, I know we've been talking for quite a while. I want to ask you something about your company, which is NFlight. And uh, I know that I actually, before I met you and you started talking about NFlight on our intro call, I was like, your name of your company sounds really familiar. And I figured out that I have a whole bunch of products in my old flight bag that I used to use all the time. And my two favorite ones that I used was the filter, the propeller filter, because it allows you to hook up uh, a GoPro and then you not see the propeller just spinning around, which was super rad. And I use that quite a bit. And then the other one was recording the audio on your uh, through your headset, so I can record ATC audio and my audio all at the same time. And that didn't exist. It's still, I think you might be the only one that has that product out. And it's a phenomenal product. I love it so much. And I haven't done many recordings lately. And although we keep on saying I'm going to do it, I haven't done it lately. But now I probably need to pull that cord out and set up my GoPro somewhere and actually go do some fun flights. So how did you get involved in that company? Kind of a short version of it. And I'd love to know what your kind of favorite product is.
Yeah, I was also a customer, an unwitting customer of this company long ago, and before I got involved with it, and the the two products that you mentioned were also the two products that I had: the GoPro filter and the audio cable that goes to the GoPro. We also have audio cables that go into smartphones and that sort of thing if you want to record the audio. But it's interesting how I got involved. I became aware of the owner, and he was interested in getting out of the company. And at that time, a buddy of mine and I were looking at ways that we might, kind of get into aviation companies, and have ways of having excuses to fly and that sort of thing. And so we ended up buying the company from the founder, and we're actually we the way that it worked out is we kind of bought the company, and then tried to make the operations a little bit more standardized and rigorous. And now we actually still work with the founder, and we do a lot of projects together. And I think from his perspective, it allows him to kind of work on the aspects of the business that are enjoyable to him, and we work on the rest of it, and it works out really, really, really well. I love those two products as well. We also have a whole set of products over on the microphone side. Um, so nflightmic.com or nflightnomad.com, which is where we sell um, headset products. And so we've got a product that will turn consumer grade headphones into aviation headsets. That's our microphone product. And then we've also just recently come out with our Ascent headset, which is just really, really exciting. I'm jazzed about that company. I think it's a great company. We have unbelievable customer support. All of our everybody in the company is a pilot. Everybody in the company uses all of our gear, and we just yeah, it's an enjoyable experience to call our tech support, and most of the people that call end up just being really, really big fans of the company. I'm really proud of it, and it's been a great experience, and I love being a part of the endeavor.
Well, I love it, and, what a cool story to hear, and I know you're an entrepreneur like me, and sometimes those new businesses or passion businesses are sometimes the most fun. I know I'm opening up my wine bar, which I don't know if I told you about yet, but, that'll be coming, I think, the first week of June. I'm actually gonna get the keys to it in 12 days or 13 days.
Wow. Well, I'll come up and we'll have to get together up there. I'll be one of your first clients.
I love it. I love it so much. So it'll be a blast, and it's just a fun endeavor of mine, that I've been wanting to do since I've been working on my WSET, SOM stuff. But the last question I want to kind of ask you, and then I'll ask where we can reach you at, is if you can give yourself one piece of advice back when you were just starting. So let's just say we're talking a new 15, 16, 17-year-old teenager right now who wants to become a pilot, or even somebody in their mid 20s and they're tired of their day job and they want a new career and they're looking for some adventure. What's one piece of advice you'd give to somebody brand new that's just starting out?
What comes to mind for that is always be learning. The cool thing about being a pilot is it's like it's almost like a real live video game. There is just constantly another level to go to, another just another place to get, another rating to go for, all of that stuff. And every single thing you do, every certificate you earn, every rating you earn, everybody you meet increases your sense of comfort and the size of your comfort zone. Like I said, getting my glider rating was a real formative experience for me, and it really helped me get a lot more comfort and a lot more confidence in my abilities with the aircraft. Same with my instrument rating. Oh my gosh, what an experience that was.
Oh yeah.
Commercial, every single thing, it just tightens the tolerances and just makes you better, and it makes you more confident. When I went up to learn aerobatics, all of a sudden, I was afraid to stall the airplane. I was afraid to do anything. I go up in to learn aerobatics in a Yak 52 with an old DOS IF instructor, and this guy within 3 days has me doing inverted flat spins and getting out of them. I mean, from a place of being afraid to stall the aircraft because, "Oh, I don't know about that," to a place where I'm going upside down and putting it into an inverted flat spin and then recovering from that and doing it safely and doing it confidently. I can put the airplane into a spin. One of the very first maneuver you do in the aerobatic primary sequence is a 1.5 turn spin. You angle up to 45 degrees, and then you put the airplane into a spin, and you're supposed to recover at exactly 1.5 turns. And think about that. Think about that from going from a place where I don't know about spins to a place where you can spin on demand and with precision. It just absolutely changes your worldview about the capabilities of the aircraft and the capabilities of you as a pilot. It is so important to do. And so I would think, just look at it as a lifelong learning experience and endeavor. And man, make a lot of friends. Pilots are the friendliest people in the world. We're all part of this club. It's not a big club. And you can go up and talk about to any pilot about his airplane, and you will have a friend.
I fully agree. I've been to so many parties where I run into the one pilot, and all we do is we hang out and talk about airplanes all night long.
Absolutely. And then your wives just go, "Oh man, there's another pilot here."
I know it turns and now it's that or wine for me. So if I find one of two people that are into those two things, it's like, oh, no one's going to talk all night. Only this. So cool. Well, thank you again for being on the show. If anybody would like to reach out to you or find your company or anything like that, where can people find you and your related companies?
Yeah, my email address at NFlight is Shaun, SHAUN, at nflighttech.com. You can find us at nflightcam.com or nflightmike.com. And that's probably the best way to reach me. And man, I love hearing from people. You can talk to our support at nflightcam.com. That'll get to everybody in the company. And yeah, give us a call, send me an email, whatever. Love to chat.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for joining us today. For all of our listeners, if you'd like to reach out to either me or Carson, you can reach us on our emails, brandon@aviationmentors.com, or Carson for our producer, Mark, it is producer if you would like to be a guest on our show as well. Remember, the best way to reach us is to follow us on LinkedIn. So please check out our LinkedIn handles. You'll find the most great looking Brandon or Carson right at the top of the page when you search our names. Please don't forget to hit like, follow, subscribe, and share on whatever streaming platform you happen to be listening or, of course, watching us on today. We thank you for supporting us and for listening today or watching. It's a huge part of helping us grow the podcast and, of course, help future pilots and grow the aviation community. So thank you so much. And as Carson always says, and I am so lucky I get to say it on his behalf today, as we wrap up for the day, remember, we're here to guide you in your aviation journey, so fly safe.